We're back for our daily college basketball best bets here on Saturday, February 28th. And with it being the last day of February, you know what that means. March is approaching. Tomorrow, our first college basketball best bets video of the month of March. I know the conference tournaments don't start until March 2nd with the Horizon League, but regardless, March is coming up soon. And of course, that's when things really start to heat up and we get to start looking at all the different conference tournaments and obviously on to March Madness itself. Again, things are just heating up. But today, our final best bets video for the month of February. We got some really big matchups today, only big time matchups, I would say, featured in the video today, so you're not going to want to miss it. We've got a loaded Saturday set of games, and folks, before we get into our best bets, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for some more daily college basketball best bets here on the channel. Later today, we'll have our NBA best bets on the channel as well. Exactly 5 games today in the association, so obviously we will have a best bet per game. Also on the channel or on Greedo Plays MMA, our UFC Fight Night Mexico full card predictions. Brandon Moreno taking on Lonnie Kavanaugh in the main event again from Mexico City. We've got full card predictions and best bets for that card over in Mexico. Before we get into the best bets for today, real quickly, we'll talk about yesterday's games. Again, a limited set of games. We go 2-3, not where we wanted to be. We kicked the day off with Niagara, not just covering 8.5 at home against Quinnipiac. No, they win. So there's one for the Purple Eagles. You know, I guess I wouldn't even say they're desperate at this point of the year. Their year is over, and they come out and find a way to win at home. Speaking of winning at home as big dogs, how about the Golden Griffins of Canisius? Thanks, guys. They don't just cover the 9 points against the Merrimack Warriors, the number 1 team in the conference who was, 16-2? Nope. The Golden Griffins at home win outright against Merrimack. So both Niagara and Canisius, 2 teams we have laughed at all year long, both win yesterday. So we split our Metro Atlantic games. Illinois, I'll say the first 8 minutes looked good. And then as soon as Michigan realized, wait, anything down low we can get, we'll send both of our bigs in the paint with the Mara and Morez Johnson, and they don't have an answer. So yikes, I may be out on Illinois winning the entire thing right now. No, we'll see. It depends what they draw in March. They just got to get hot at the right time. That's just college basketball for you. The other MAC goes our way. Akron dominates Kent State. By the way, how about Miami, Ohio yesterday? Hey, win and survive. Survive and advance is all I can say. They are still an at-large team. Nobody's telling me otherwise. It is difficult to be, 29-0 in college basketball. That's absurd. Hell of a win for them in Kalamazoo yesterday. But Akron wins and covers against Kent State. And then Marshall, yeah, whatever. Thanks, guys. The Sun Belt, by the way, there was a 6-way tie for second place in the Sun Belt. So poor Arkansas State, who finished and tied for second, only gets to go to the third round right away. They'll have to, win 4 or 5 games to win their conference tournament. Sun Belt's crazy, but yeah, Marshall loses, and yet they're still the number 2 seed in the Sun Belt tournament. So can't wait to fade those guys when the Chanticleers get a hold of them in about a week's time. Okay, on to the first of our 5 best bets today. For Saturday, we kick things off with a matchup in the SEC. It's time to end our cold spell in the Southeast. It's just different in the Southeast. It just means more in the SEC, at least so I'm told. Kentucky versus Vanderbilt today. I will go with Kentucky at home. Why? Vandy is not that good. And the way Vandy's been playing recently, again, it's calling to me. That's a horrible way of putting it. It's speaking to me. Again, that's even worse. Vandy's not playing good basketball. I know they beat Georgia, and Kentucky lost to Georgia. I don't really care. This is a massive game in Lexington at Rupp Arena. Both these teams are going to be in the tournament, right? According to ESPN, who again loves themselves some SEC hoops, they still have, by the way, Auburn in the tournament. By the way, they have Auburn in and Cal out. What are we doing? California's out of the tournament, but Auburn's in. Whew, that's unbelievable. And I'm not even, they still have Indiana in too, which, again, that'll be the main theme of tomorrow's video. Indiana's playing for their tournament tomorrow if they can beat Michigan State at home in Bloomington. Great, in front of a half-capacity crowd. Anyways, of course, ESPN has both these teams in the tournament, and they should be, right? Vanderbilt currently projected to be a 5 seed from ESPN. I got to find their exact matchup, but ESPN's got them as a 5, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, currently projected to play the Belmont Bruins. All I'm saying is Belmont is a mid-major version of Vanderbilt. It feels like a little bit. I think Belmont could pull off the upset there. Again, long way in advance. Obviously, Belmont's got to take care of business in their conference tournament. So Vandy's currently projected to be a 5. And as for Kentucky, the Wildcats are supposed to be, I believe they have them as a 7 right now. Yes, they got them as a 7. projected to play Southern Methodist in the first round. I'm not a big SEC guy. I would project Kentucky to win that basketball game. Anyways, at least right now, SMU, we'll see how they play at Stanford today. Regardless, Kentucky versus Vandy today. I'm going to go with the Kentucky Wildcats. It's a massive game. I would not say it's a bubble game because Kentucky could legitimately lose out and lose in the first round of the SEC tourney, and they'd still be in it. They would still be in the NCAA tournament. They've got Vandy tonight, then they got at A&M, and then Florida at home. Again, none of those are really, if they were to lose all of those, none of those are bad L's. Those are all quad 1 losses. Texas A&M on the road, it has to be a quad 1 loss. Those would all be quad 1 L's, but still, this is a massive game. Crowds should get a good crowd out for this game too, and I think Kentucky's able to beat up on a Vanderbilt team that I have not been impressed with recently, dating back to those 2 games they played back-to-back at Mizzou and Tennessee, especially the Tennessee game, right? Vandy's up, 4 points at halftime against Tennessee, and at the end of the game, man, Vandy can't buy a bucket. And I think their 3-point shooting struggles have really spelled that out recently. And I'll tell you again, this team's only going to go as far as Tyler Nickel, how Tyler Nickel can take them. That's probably, I worded that wrong. Tyler Nickel, they need Nickel to show up 3-point wise if they're going to be competitive in the tournament at all. Right? Nickel has had some awful 3-point games back-to-back going into this one against Tennessee, 1 for 6 from beyond the arc, 1 for 8 against the Georgia Bulldogs. This is a 44% 3-point shooter. Nickel has, of course, played at Vandy and his entire thing at Vanderbilt after transferring over from Virginia Tech back in 23-24. He's a spot-up shooter. He's on the court pretty much the entire game, at least this year he has been, and he's been an automatic bucket. If he's open from beyond the arc, he's going to pull the trigger and shoot. He usually won't take the most contested 3-point shots, but that's why his percentage is so great, because he'll be wide open at times. You'll find Tyler Nickel in transition, and he's going to obviously cash in on a 3. Recently, though, Nickel has been pretty bad. That is a huge blow to this Vandy team, because again, they only go as far as Nickel shoots, in my opinion. Yes, there's some other good players in this team, right? Tyler Tanner's dealing with an injury/illness. I think he had both in the Tennessee game. I believe he's completely fine now. Played 39 minutes against Georgia, scored 17 points. And yes, the Commodores' victory, but that's at home in Nashville. And I know, well, Kentucky did lose to Georgia at home, but I'm telling you, it's just a different environment in this game. I don't want to say, Kentucky was looking ahead in that game, but they probably were. I mean, it's a team that got very close to beating Auburn, and, Auburn could lose every single game on their schedule. They could lose to Ole Miss today, go hotty toddy, right? And even though those guys screwed us the other day. Georgia could lose today to Ole Miss, and they'd still be in the tournament, because it doesn't matter. Oh, they beat St. John, so they have to be in the tournament. It's unbelievable. Regardless, right? I'm not, that game against Auburn on the road, Kentucky's right there. It's a put-back game winner with 3 seconds left that wins the game for the Tigers on the road in Alabama. I'm not too, mad at that loss for Kentucky. Again, I don't think Auburn's very good, but again, I'm going to say, yes, that's difficult to go on the road and beat that team. Again, Auburn is fraudulent, do not get me wrong, but yes, that is a difficult environment to play in, kind of, against a team that is okay, what can I say? But Kentucky now coming off a victory on the road in South Carolina. Now, that might not be the biggest victory, and it's not, because South Carolina isn't very good. They will only go as far as Meechie Johnson can take them, but it's the way Kentucky plays defensively in that first half that really, stands out. They hold South Carolina to 21 points. That's a South Carolina team that a week prior, I guess a week ago today, played Mississippi State and had 48 points at half, and yes, that was their highest total in a half since 2018. But regardless, that's a South Carolina team that had built on some momentum, and Kentucky stops them to only 21 points in the first half. That defensive effort, I think, is going to go a long way against a Vanderbilt team that recently has had some struggle scoring. And really, I'm only looking at the Tennessee game specifically. And yeah, they beat Georgia. I'm not wowed by that. I think on the road, they're going to struggle. I know Vandy has some decent road wins this year. They went to Mississippi State and won. They beat Josh Hubbard. No. They beat Auburn on the road. They went to South Carolina and won. But they do have their fair share of L's on the road, too, in the SEC. Texas lost over in Austin. In Fayetteville, they lost to Arkansas. They lost, obviously, recently at Mizzou. And we shall see how Tyler Tanner plays. Again, I believe he's pretty close to 100%. But to me, it's not Tyler Tanner. It's not Devin McLaughlin. It's Tyler Nickel. If Nickel can get going from 3-point range, obviously they are very scary. If not, I'm really not too concerned. I like Kentucky a lot in this spot. Again, Otega Owe, obviously the man to watch for with the Wildcats. Senior, averaging 18 points per game, right? Former Oklahoma Sooner. Did have a poor effort against South Carolina, we can say, only scoring 8 points, but 2 games prior to that against Georgia and Auburn in 2 Ls, he scored 28 and 29. Got to assume Owe is going to have a better night tonight after a pretty poor performance over in Columbia, South Carolina. Besides Owe, you're looking at, Denzel Aberdeen, Colin Chandler, Malachi Moreno is their 5, right? The freshman who has had a good freshman year, I will say. I like the Wildcats enough in this spot. I think they will win at home, and I'm telling you, Rupp is going to be going in this game, I believe, or for this game. I believe the crowd's going to be very involved. It's a primetime SEC spot. Again, it just means more in the Southeast. I'm going to go with the Kentucky Wildcats to win at home against, in my opinion, a fraudulent Vanderbilt team. Now, I'm not telling you Kentucky's some title contender either. They're not, but I think they're better in this specific spot. I'm going Kentucky money line at home to beat the Vanderbilt Commodores. Minus 115 for the Wildcats. On to our second best bet of the video. Again, only big-time matchups today, if you want to call it that. Wisconsin going on the road to Seattle, Washington to take on the Washington Huskies. I will say I did get close to taking Kansas on the points today on the road at Arizona, but Koa Pete's playing now, and I don't know. Kentucky's much better. Kansas is way better, obviously, at Allen Fieldhouse. So I stayed away from that. Instead, I decided on this game at the same time. Great hoops, Wisconsin going on the road to play the Washington Huskies. Now you may ask, why am I taking Wisconsin again after that abysmal effort in Eugene against the Oregon Ducks? And I asked myself that question too. Okay, I thought long and hard about this one, but ultimately I came down to the conclusion there is no way they shoot that poorly in back-to-back games. There is no way, no how that happens again. Wisconsin against the Oregon Ducks goes 14 for 45 from beyond the three-point line. It is unbelievable. Yes, they took 45 three-point shots. They only hit on 14 of them. Oregon takes 19 three-point shots, and they go 9 for 19. I will say Oregon got to the line effectively, and the Badgers had a lot of trouble dealing with Nate Biddle. And going into that game, and I know Nolan Winter got injured. I know he did, but still. Going into that game, I said I really didn't think that Wisconsin was going to have much trouble at all with Nate Biddle. Because, Biddle, yes, he's a stretch, but if you just double him inside, you can be all right against him for the most part. Obviously, that wasn't the case, right? That wasn't the case with Wisconsin going to Oregon. Nate Biddle had a pretty decent game from beyond the arc, 3 for 7, again, for Biddle's standards. Even though, again, attacking the basket, Biddle wasn't the best. It was more that perimeter threat that he gave that, really gave the Badgers some trouble. I have not seen anything saying that the Badgers are, banged up going into this game. I believe we're looking at a 100% Wisconsin team going into this one. And I know Biddle had some success. And yes, you're looking at the other team in the Big Ten, obviously up in the Pacific Northwest, and they have a dominant big two in Hans Steinbach. I think it's a little different. I think, because guys, okay, Biddle and Steinbach aren't the same player. And don't get me wrong, okay? Steinbach's the better player. I'm not going to say Nate Biddle's a better player than Hans Steinbach. Well, Biddle is more credentialed. Biddle's obviously more experienced, but Steinbach has a very bright future as just a freshman, averaging 18 and 11 in his freshman year, obviously, with the Huskies. They're going to be, if he won't stay at Washington, go ahead, but there's going to be some big-time programs calling for Hans Steinbach next year if he's back, obviously. Anyways, he creates a different problem, though, than Nate Biddle. And yes, there's size on both ends, but you're not concerned about Steinbach, for the most part, shooting the three-point ball on you. That's just not his game. He'll occasionally attempt it, but, I can't imagine he's better than a 30% three-point shooter. He's a 34% three-point shooter. Okay, the point is, though, he barely attempts them. He went 0 for 2 against Rutgers, didn't shoot a 3 against either Maryland or Minnesota. The last 3 he hit was back on February 11th at home against Penn State, a game in which Washington lost. Anyways, it's a different threat and different challenge when you take on Steinbach because he does really well. He's a really great rebounder. He creates second chance opportunities, and obviously they're going to feed him down low. Again, that's not the Biddle problem, and obviously Wisconsin struggled with Biddle. I don't think they're going to struggle much with Steinbach. Again, we know Steinbach's going to get his stats, right? He's going to score his points. He's going to get on the glass. He's going to get his boards. I'm not overly concerned with it, though, to be honest. I'm not scared of Hans Steinbach in this game. I think Wisconsin plays a style that makes it really difficult for Washington to win this game. because of how many three-point shots they attempt. And I understand they went 14 for 45 in their last game. The only player on that team that was able to hit threes was John Blackwell. Blackwell, who had struggled against Iowa, went 6 for 14 against Oregon from beyond the arc. You get, Winter 1 for 4, Rhodey 2 for 6, Boyd 1 for 4. Nick Boyd, man, had a very bad game against Oregon for his standards, 11 points in 32 minutes. Off the bench, Braden Carrington, who's like a 45% three-point shooter, went 2 for 5. Austin Rapp went 1 for 6. They just simply need better three-point shooting. And they went into half winning, and they were up by 3 going into half, and yet you come out of the second half, and Oregon, again, in that entire second half, outscores Wisconsin 55-38, ultimately riding that to an 85-71 victory. That's just unacceptable if you're Wisconsin. Obviously, you know you're going to be in the tournament regardless, but you can't lose back-to-back games in this road trip. Again, this is just a momentum thing heading into the Big Ten tournament, and obviously the NCAA tournament as well, obviously, as the Badgers have lost their number, and now again on the road for this matchup against the Huskies. So here's my thing, though. Stylistically, Washington's going to struggle against this team. I firmly believe so. Because of, again, the way Wisconsin plays, I just don't know how Washington can keep up. This is an awful three-point shooting team. They struggle to score a lot of points, and if you've seen their last couple results, they have not played great. I know they beat Rutgers, but a lot of teams in college basketball can beat Rutgers other than like Maryland. They're coming off that win against Rutgers, but they lost the game prior to that at Maryland. They had beaten Minnesota at home, whatever, and then a home loss prior to that against Penn State. To me, this reminds me of the Iowa game, not just because, Wisconsin just beat the Hawkeyes. No, because of the way Iowa pushed in the second half, right? Because of the way Iowa was able to shoot that three-point ball, obviously with Bennett Sturtz and company, and the way that Iowa was able to get out and transition over in Seattle is what gave the Huskies ultimately a lot of trouble. Now, Steinbach had a great game. He had 22 and 12. Zoom Diallo actually had 12 assists in that game for the Washington Huskies. But ultimately, the final score is 84-74. Iowa, completely pulls away. They ultimately cover the spread too, and it's a great victory for the Hawkeyes. Up again, very far away from Iowa City. Same thing with Wisconsin, long road trip. But I do believe just if they can get out and score some points and not get stuck to a low-scoring game like they did against Oregon. And I'm not talking, again, we need more than 70 points. If Wisconsin gets into the 80s, they will not lose. Again, the only reason this game is at this line is because of Wisconsin's recent game at Oregon. If that never happened, which obviously you can say that about a lot of things in sports, if this didn't happen, the line would be this. But hear me out. If Wisconsin never played Oregon, let's just say they never played, Wisconsin would be rolling into Washington as a 6.5-point favorite. Washington has been a piss-poor team all season long. Wisconsin just beat Iowa, and I get it. They have struggled on the road. They lost in Columbus. They lost in Eugene. They technically lost in Bloomington because of a bad foul call, but again, we will take it. Hoosiers. I think they overcome that here. I know they did beat Michigan in Ann Arbor, which after yesterday's game, Michigan looks unbeatable again in the Big Ten, but we shall see and wait for that. I'm taking the Badgers here. I do believe they go back on the road and win this game. Again, they've had to sit and wait since that Oregon game a couple nights ago, which again was a pathetic display of basketball for the Badgers. I can't imagine they shoot that poorly in back-to-back games. And as long as they have just a normal Wisconsin three-point shooting night, there is no way, no how that Washington will be able to keep up. They just don't shoot the three-point ball all that effectively. I gotta go with the Badgers on the road in UW at Seattle. Wisconsin money line -120 against the Huskies. On to our third best bet of the video. I can't believe it. We are returning to the Southeastern Conference because, again, it just means more in the South. Alabama goes on the road to Knoxville, Tennessee to take on the Tennessee Volunteers, a game in which obviously is a rematch of a couple weeks ago where the Volunteers did win the first tangle between, that's a weird way of putting it. They won the first matchup between them and the Crimson Tide. And yet, I'm going to go Alabama on the points. Alabama plus 4.5 in Knoxville. I believe this one's going to go right down to the wire. Bama's played better since that game. I know the last, real tough and ranked team they played on the road, they got embarrassed in Gainesville against the Florida Gators. But since that loss to Florida, I know they haven't played any real great teams other than one. We'll get to that in a second. Bama's done nothing but win. Since losing to Florida, they beat A&M where they score 100 points. That's a key in this game. They go to Auburn, they win because the Tigers suck. They go to Ole Miss and obviously beat the Rebels because they suck too. They score 93. They beat South Carolina at home 89-75. Those guys suck too. They beat Arkansas at home 117-115. That is a phenomenal victory against a very good team. Bama survives. And then back-to-back wins going into this game at LSU and against another team that sucks, Mississippi State and Josh Hubbard. They beat him 100-75 just a couple days ago. Anyways, Bama is back on the road for this matchup against Tennessee. The name of the game tonight for the Crimson Tide will be score a lot of points. You can't get stuck to just 73, in which they did the first time out in Tuscaloosa. That was a game in which the odds were flipped. Bama was the 4.5-point favorite in that first matchup against Tennessee. Now they find themselves as 4-point dogs, obviously on the road. Can Tennessee do one of two things? Can the Volunteers hold Alabama? Because obviously, yes, Tennessee's the better defensive team in this matchup. Or can the Volunteers continue to keep up scoring-wise with Alabama, and this one does indeed turn into a shootout? I'm thinking it's going to be the latter. I think Tennessee keeps up with the shootout, but I think Bama's able to keep it close. I'm not going to pick a winner. I'm not, right? Bama obviously comes into this game as the underdog. Alabama currently plus 185. The Volunteers of Tennessee minus 225. I'm not going to pick a winner, but I do believe this one is going to go down to the very end. Bama's heating up right now. And yes, they haven't beaten the best teams. And this is a team that has struggled all year long on the road. At Florida, at Vandy, they lost. But regardless, every Bama game, for the most part, is still a shootout on the road. If they can just play their style of game on the road in Knoxville, I don't think Tennessee can get away from them by more than 4.5 points. Again, the Volunteers may win the basketball game, and I'm not denying that. That very well could happen. I just think Alabama is able to keep it close. And I think we're going to get a lot more scoring than we did in that first matchup. Tennessee, again, these are two SEC teams that have different styles of ball, right? And most SEC teams kind of all play the same. Now, obviously, Alabama does it at a much better degree and much, they play SEC ball just better than these other squads, right? Take that crappy LSU versus Ole Miss game, the Lane Kiffin Bowl, but just in basketball, for example, right? That game that happened earlier in the week on, what was that, Tuesday, I believe it was, or was it Wednesday? One of the two, regardless. I think it was Wednesday. I think it was. No, yes, I think it was Wednesday. Anyways, it's a typical SEC game. Teams are playing, I'm not going to say they're playing piss poor defense, but, the best scorers in these SEC games usually will go out and score 20 points per night. Okay, or at least they'll go out and, the main guys that you expect to come through and, if you need buckets, for example, I'll use Tennessee, Jacoby Gillespie and Philon are likely going to score a lot of points, right? Like, those guys are likely going to score a lot of points in this game. But that happened in the Ole Miss LSU game. My point in which is, how SEC ball works, but the exception, there's an exception to that. It's a couple of teams, and Tennessee's one of them. The Volunteers, they can go out and win your shootout, and obviously you see them do that occasionally, but they want to slow the game down. They want to win low-scoring defensive battles, and that was on display last Saturday against the Vanderbilt Commodores, right? All-Tennessee matchup, rivalry game. Tennessee is on the road at Vandy, and the Volunteers outlast the Commodores. They ultimately win the game 69-65. Again, that's one that goes right down to the wire. You're looking possession for possession. Vandy's hitting some circus shots, and Tennessee's finding their looks underneath as well. And Nate Ahmet, man, what a phenomenal performance out of him. He is likely going to be a top 10 pick in the NBA draft, but the clutch time buckets out of him in that Vanderbilt game after being somewhat non-existent early in the game, absolutely big time. I'm not as sold on Ahmet as I am with the other top prospects. Again, I would call them the top 5 regardless right now, no order: Peterson, DeBonsta, Boozer, Wilson, and Kingston Flemings. But I do believe Ahmet is going to be a surefire lottery pick, likely a top 10 pick as well. But it's his clutchness and it's his all around stoicism, is that a word? I'm throwing in a lot of words I don't even know if exist today. It's the fact that he was able to remain cool and calm under pressure. I should have just used that the first time around. Against Vanderbilt in the clutch is what ultimately wins the game for the Volunteers, and again is a massive spot for Ament. But the thing is, Tennessee then, after a massive victory, they go on the road to take on Missouri, who I don't think is good at all. Missouri's gonna make the tournament, right? They are currently, are they on an 11 or a 10 right now? They're at 10 right now, I think, for ESPN's bracketology, which again is just how many SEC teams can we fit into a tournament. They've got 11 right now in this thing. That is absurd. Notice, by the way, how there's not a single SEC team that's on the bubble that's out of the tournament. That's only reserved for non-SEC teams. It's crazy, right? On ESPN's bubble, they've got the last 4 byes, all 4 of them SEC teams: Georgia, Mizzou, A&M, Texas. Oh, first team in Dayton for the first 4, Auburn. 5 teams all in the bubble. They have to all be in, but no, Cal's not a tournament team. Okay, but Auburn is. Sorry, it's unbelievable to me. Anyways, Missouri currently a 10 seed. They'd be projected to play Wisconsin right now. Wisconsin would beat the crap out of Missouri. And Tennessee obviously just goes on the road and loses to the Tigers over in Columbia. It's a game in which Missouri really pours it on in that second half. They put 47 points on Tennessee after a more Tennessee style of game in the first half. Out comes the Tigers in the second half. How about T.O. Barrett? He averages 8 points per game this season, does the sophomore. He puts up 28 against Tennessee just the other day. If Bama's able to play that fast-paced style and Bama's able to score a lot of points on Tennessee, again, they should probably cover the spread. And ultimately, that's what I'm looking at here. I believe Bama's got too many good scores to be held in check again against the Volunteers. They know what to expect the second time around. Again, Philon, who averages 21 a night. Aiden Holloway's at 17 points per game score for Bama as well. Latrell Wrightsell as well is averaging 12.5. Amari Allen's averaging 12.5. There's a lot of really good players in this team, right? Bidako is gone, or however the hell you say the dude's name, the former G League player, obviously is no longer allowed to play for the Alabama Crimson Tide, which is definitely for the better. And don't get me wrong, Tennessee's got their fair share of really great players as well. Nate Ament, Jacoby Gillespie, I get it. I'm going to be going with the Alabama Crimson Tide on the road to cover the points. I'm not taking them to win. You can, again, have it your way on the money line winner of this game. I'm not going to play it personally. I'm looking at the points here, and I think Bama is able to walk into Knoxville and cover the spread here. Alabama currently, according to ESPN, projected to be a number 4 seed. They'd be matched up with UNC Wilmington in the first round. Seahawks are tough, but probably a Bama victory. Tennessee in the first round currently projected to take on Liberty. A game that could get very interesting, but likely Tennessee would win. Anyways, give me Bama plus 4.5 in Knoxville tonight for our second of 2 SEC best bets. Something you're not probably going to see again for a while. Anyways, on to, you might see it again later. Anyways, on, like, during the SEC tournament. Next up, our fourth best bet, we go to the Big 12. UCF at home against the Baylor Bears. I have no idea why this is only minus 140. If there is a trap, unfortunately, we shall be falling right into it. But there is no way UCF does not beat this Baylor team tonight. I don't see it. I don't see how they don't beat them. I think I might have phrased that wrong. UCF's definitely winning this basketball game. Nothing's a guarantee. I'd be shocked if they don't get this one. I get it. They're coming off the Utah trip where they played both the Utes and the Cougars. Very difficult game where they barely get out of Salt Lake City with the victory, beating Utah by 2 points. And then they go to Provo and straight up just blow out Brigham Young. Final score is only 13 points, a 13-point victory for UCF. But I mean, Brigham Young is getting back into that game, and they're just kind of chucking up shots at the end of the game. And BYU is hitting those shots, but ultimately UCF still wins the game by 13. They were up by 30 at one point in that game. One of the most dominant road displays we've seen all year long in the Big 12 from a team not named Arizona. So phenomenal stuff out of Central Florida. They've now come off 3 consecutive victories going into this game: Texas Christian, Utah, BYU. Now for the Baylor Bears. I was between this and BYU versus West Virginia today with our Big 12 best bet. Obviously, I don't specifically look for conferences to fill for best bets, but I was deciding between these two. I decided on UCF instead of Brigham Young going to Morgantown and winning, because we watched the way the Baylor Bears have played this season. They haven't played bad basketball, I'll tell you that, but they've been a much better team in Waco than they've been outside of Waco, Texas. Away from Waco, they've won 1 game in the conference this season, and it's at Stillwater. They did go to WVU and win as well. But I mean, UCF is better than those two teams, right? Baylor 4-11, massively, disappointing season for them, obviously, right? 14-14, 4-11 record in the Big 12. If they were in the Southeastern Conference though, at 4-11 in their conference, they'd probably get in. But whatever. UCF, I don't think there's any debate on whether or not the Knights are out of the tournament. Like, if they, if they start losing, obviously this 3-game winning streak, I believe, fully put them in. UCF currently projected to be a 9 seed. They'd match up with Iowa in the first round of the tournament. We'd be on the Hawkeyes in that matter. But regardless, I think UCF kind of has to be it at this point. At least I'd hope, right? These 3 straight victories have been massive for them, and the win at Brigham Young, again, that's a massive quad 1 victory for UCF. But obviously, you got to go out and still play the games, and this is a huge one for them, at least in terms of seeding, right? You don't want to lose to a Baylor team that's 4-11, and all the momentum is on the side of the Knights in this matchup. I think they have to win this game, man. And I get it, minus 140, not the greatest, odds on this, but trust me, I'll redeem myself in a second. You'll see what our final best bet play is today. It's a dandy, but anyways, these 3 straight wins have been massive for UCF after losing 3 in a row prior to this win streak. They lost at Houston. They lost at Cincinnati, who, how about the Bearcats, man? That's a sneaky bubble team right now. I don't think they're going to get in because they don't play in the Southeast, but I don't know, man. If Cincinnati wins out and beats Brigham Young at home, I think you kind of have to look at them being in. But no, we'll put an Auburn over Cincinnati. How about that? We'll just put an Auburn instead. Anyways, Baylor, man. UCF. after losing those 3 straight games, have won 3 in a row. It's just been a team of runs all year long. I mean, look at this. I mean, dating back to their win against Cincinnati at home back on, what was that, January 11th, UCF has won 2 straight games, then lost 2 straight games, then won 3 games in a row, then lost 3 games in a row, now has won 3 games in a row. Hopefully that trend of, winning as many games as you just lost is broken today, and I think they will because of this recent play and because of the recent scoring out of Central Florida. We've seen 82, 73, and 97 points in their last 3 matchups, and they're able to go into Provo and just put it on Brigham Young. I know it was a little bit of an uncharacteristically crazy shooting night for the Central Florida Knights from beyond the arc as they shot 60%. Obviously, that's great for any team in college basketball, but is the fact they were able to score 52 points. They were able to attack the basket when they needed to, and it was just straight up dominance. And yeah, Brigham Young scores 56 in the second half, but the game was basically over by then because, again, at halftime, the score is 52-28 in favor of the Central Florida Knights. You had an amazing game out of Thomas Fulks. Fulks scored 24 points for Central Florida, and Jordan Burks also had points into the 20s. He scored 24 against Brigham Young on 31 minutes of 9 of 12 shooting on 4 of 7 from beyond the arc. I think UCF's got this game against a Baylor team that, I wouldn't say playing for pride, obviously, because every team still makes the Big 12 tournament, and we're still looking at seeding and whatnot. Again, that's one of my favorite parts of March. Obviously, the actual tournament's great, but conference tourneys are just something else, right? Baylor is still fighting for positioning in the conference tournament. They will most definitely be playing in the first round, though, on March 10th. It's just a matter of where will they be seated in this tournament. And the same thing you can say, too, about Central Florida. Again, the conference tourney doesn't matter as much to Central Florida as it does, obviously, to Baylor, because Baylor, hypothetically, obviously, if they win out, they could steal a bid. I don't think we're going to see that happening. They don't have the magic that the North Carolina State Wolfpack had, 3 seasons ago. Anyways, nobody's going to. That team was just absurd with DJ Banks and company. Regardless, though, I'm looking at this game, Baylor, I guess that's what they have to play for. If Baylor wins this game, there's a chance, they could potentially get up to, I don't know, what is it, a 12 seed in this tournament, maybe a 11 seed in the tournament and get to play Utah in the first round. Ultimately, they're going to go into the second round and meet up with a team like Central Florida or a Brigham Young and probably lose anyway. So I don't really think there's much at stake, honestly, for Baylor. They know, obviously, they have that conference tournament to look forward to. They get UCF tonight on the road, and they got to go to Houston next Friday night, and they got a home game against Utah to close out their regular season week from today, I believe, or week from tomorrow, I think. Anyways, I like Central Florida here. Baylor has been a loser in 5 out of their last 6 games, losing to Iowa State on the road. And I will say, Baylor's played some games really tight, but they haven't come out with victories. So that's why I'm still taking Central Florida here. Again, it is one thing to play games, all these games are really close. It's another thing to actually win them, though. Baylor, 5 out of their last 6 games have been L's. 3-point loss at Hilton Coliseum against Iowa State. Competitive, I know. Home loss to BYU 99-94. Again, very competitive. They go to K-State, though, lose 90-74. They played Louisville, losing 82-71. It beat ASU, which kind of just ended somewhat the Sun Devils' chances of making the tournament. I know they're, kind of a beyond bubble team right now. I thought maybe they could have a chance after they beat Texas Tech, but they needed to go to Texas and either get 1 of 2 against Baylor and Utah. They proceeded to get none. By the way, there's still a pathway for Arizona State if they can go to Iowa State and win, but it's not going to happen. Anyways, Baylor beats Arizona State and then proceeds to lose to Arizona the other day by 7 points at home. Again, they have played some tight games, but it's one thing, again, to play competitive games. It's another thing to actually come out and win these games. Baylor's got some really good scorers, right? Cameron Carr, obviously the leading scorer on this team, the sophomore, is averaging 19 points per game after obviously being with the Volunteers last season. He just put up 26 in the loss to Arizona State. And then Tunde Yesufu, who's averaging 18 points per game, has been a consistent double-digit bucket for Baylor. He is the freshman out of Benin. He's had a really good year at the 2 guard for the Baylor Bears. I will say again, they score points. They do score a lot of points. But I think with the game being in Orlando, Central Florida, all the momentum they've just built and that onslaught and that avalanche they just put on Brigham Young, I got to believe Central Florida is able to win this basketball game. I'm going to go with the UCF Knights at home at -140. I know those aren't the greatest odds, but it's a spot that I really like UCF in. I just don't see Baylor overcoming the Central Florida team and getting over the hump in the Big 12, at least right now, against the Central Florida Knights. UCF at home as we move on to our final best bet of the video and the final regular season conference matchup between the Gonzaga Bulldogs and the St. Mary's Gales. As of right now, the final regular season matchup between Gonzaga and St. Mary's. Obviously, they could meet someday down the line. They could schedule a non-con. They could potentially meet up in a Feast Week tournament or whatnot. But as of right now, actually, Zaga's going to continue to go likely to Vegas for Players era, and I think St. Mary's has already signed up for Battle of Atlantis again, so they probably will never cross paths until the postseason. Gonzaga and St. Mary's for one final time in WCC regular season play in Moraga. I'm taking St. Mary's at home. Yep, I really like the Gales in this spot. I've always favored St. Mary's in this rivalry. I've just always cheered for St. Mary's against Gonzaga. I'm not getting emotional with this pick. That's just more so of a, I've more so me saying I've watched a lot of Zaga St. Mary's games, and I've always again cheered for St. Mary's in these. But it's truly a spot where I like St. Mary's tonight. Zaga, since losing to Portland, has responded in a big way. I'm not gonna deny the fact that I took them to lose to Santa Clara at Levy. I thought that was a good play for Santa Clara, and I still think it was. I think the Broncos had a good enough game, and obviously they just didn't come through. But I still believe everything I've said about Zaga throughout the year. I think they're extremely beatable. I think Gonzaga is good. I don't think they're great. And I think this is one of the weaker Zaga teams we've gotten as of late. And I'm saying that compared to a team I know last year that was phenomenal, ended up losing the second round. Sorry, the Zaga team that was not phenomenal. A Zaga team that lost St. Mary's and Santa Clara last year. St. Mary's twice, by the way. This team's good. They're just not number 9 in the country good. And that's obviously where the national media has them. That's where everyone thinks, oh, Gonzaga, number 9 team in the country. I don't buy it. I really don't. Again, Graham Ike senior season, Ike, he's been good throughout his entire collegiate tenure, right? Former Wyoming Cowboy, now his 3rd season at Gonzaga. He's been really great, obviously. But it's just, beyond Graham Ike, I'm still not impressed with this team. And obviously, again, that's with the Brandon Huff injury. And Huff, I don't know when this guy's going to be back. I'm assuming he'll be back for the NCAA tournament because, we were told, 48 weeks when the injury happened, and that was like 6 weeks ago. So I got to think Huff's coming back for the actual tournament. Will he come back for, the WCC tourney? Probably not, because that doesn't really matter for Gonzaga at all. That'll mean a lot more to St. Mary's and Santa Clara, obviously. But without Braden Huff, I'm not a big fan of the Zaga team. I know, again, since losing to the Portland Pilots, they've then proceeded to win 6 consecutive games. You beat Oregon State and Corvallis, you beat Wazoo, you beat Santa Clara, you beat San Francisco, you beat Pacific, and I guess you avenged your loss in Spokane against the Portland Pilots, beating them by a whopping 41 points, 89-48. However, tonight, I am going to be taking the St. Mary's Gales. I think St. Mary's, and what they do, obviously, it's how St. Mary's basketball works. You slow the game down, you limit possessions, and you play a defensively minded game. And I know they've dropped 80 points in back-to-back outings against both Wazoo and Santa Clara. That Santa Clara game between 2 Bay Area teams, a massive win for St. Mary's, obviously, as I didn't ever think St. Mary's was not going to be in the tourney, but obviously that win against the Broncos at home in Moraga certainly certified that. Santa Clara now obviously trying to find their way through the bubble. The Broncos today will be playing Oregon State, or is it Wazoo? It's Oregon State today. Santa Clara likely wins that game, putting them at 24-7 on the season. The national media will try to tell you, well, Auburn's better than that team, and Auburn's more deserving of being in the tournament than Santa Clara. So we shall see. Again, Santa Clara likely going to be matched up against St. Mary's again later in the season. So in the postseason, I believe that's how the tiebreaker works. I'm trying to think. Yes, I think Zaga has the tiebreaker over St. Mary's, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, they do. So regardless, Zaga's already celebrated. They did that against Portland. They won the regular season WCC title, obviously, in their final year of the WCC before, obviously, they are jumping to the Pacific 12. I'm kind of mad St. Mary's isn't in the Pac-12 either. I wanted them to follow Zaga to the Pac-12. I know, obviously, the Pac-12 made a certain exception just for, obviously, Gonzaga to be there. But, I mean, hell, Texas State's going to be in the Pac-12. You can't put St. Mary's in the Pac-12, too? I don't know. Again, I hope that happens down the line somewhere. But if you're St. Mary's, why would you ever go to in all fairness to them, why would you ever go to the Pac-12 when now the WCC is yours? Your biggest competition in the WCC from here on out is going to be Santa Clara, opposed to what it's been for the last how many years, Gonzaga, the known powerhouse Gonzaga Bulldogs, right? So anyways, I'm going to go St. Mary's tonight because of, again, what they do defensively. I know the first matchup they lost in Spokane. They lost 73-65. St. Mary's is winning that game early. It is a second half collapse, though, out of St. Mary's that ultimately wins the game for Zaga. Graham Ike has gotten bitched by St. Mary's his entire career. Well, I don't want to say Graham Ike specifically. Graham Ike's teams have been bitched by St. Mary's over the last 3 seasons. He has a monstrous game in that game, obviously in Spokane. He scores 30 points. He goes 3 for 5 from beyond the arc, hits some massive 3-point shots against St. Mary's that really, it changes the momentum of that game. But the first half was a pretty well played half by St. Mary's. They just completely fall apart in the second half, and the Gales couldn't get a 3-point shot to fall in the second half either. They shot 29% in the entire game from beyond the arc. I don't think they hit more than 2 in that second half. I think if St. Mary's has a more consistent outing in this game, they should be all right. Don't forget, right, this is a St. Mary's team that beat Gonzaga twice last season. They beat him in Spokane and they beat him in Moraga as well. And since St. Mary's lost to Gonzaga, they have done nothing but win. I get it. It's the WCC, and all these games St. Mary's is heavily favored to win, with the exception obviously being Santa Clara. But 7 consecutive victories for the Gales after losing to Gonzaga. They beat San Diego, San Francisco, Pepperdine, Pacific on the road, Seattle U on the road in a close one, I will say, one they barely got out of, Wazoo on the road, and most recently, right, the Santa Clara Broncos at home. It's a really talented St. Mary's team, though. And again, what they do, they just do it really effectively. You know, Morauskas has been so great for this team, obviously dating back to last season. He's averaging 19 points per game as the junior out of Lithuania. Again, a consistent double-digit bucket for St. Mary's. The deciding factor for me, honestly, is going to be Mikey Lewis. I know Morauskas is probably going to score. Can Mikey Lewis come through and have a big game against Gonzaga, considering his last game against Gonzaga was horrible? He scored 4 points in 19 minutes against the Bulldogs in Spokane, compared to last season where he was the difference maker in that matchup, at least in Moraga, as Mikey Lewis hit 4 3-pointers, scoring 16 points off the bench against the Bulldogs last season, at least that game in Moraga. The second game, even bigger difference maker in Spokane. He hit 5 3-pointers in 18 minutes. He scored 18 points. He's the deciding factor in this game, in my opinion, and his three-point shooting ability is going to determine the winner of this basketball game. You know, Joshua Dent's a good player, obviously. McKeever, we'll see how much they play McKeever. We've seen games this season where McKeever's come off the bench, and recently his minutes have been way down as St. Mary's has gone a little bit smaller, / they're just playing Harry Wessels a lot more. They're senior centers, so we'll see what they do tonight. I'm assuming they're going to play Wessels, who's obviously been with the Gales his entire collegiate career. But to me, again, the game is going to come down to 2 things. 3 things. St. Mary's defense, St. Mary's three-point shooting ability, which starts and ends with Mikey Lewis, and the help around Graham Ike. Because I know Ike is going to get his minutes and he's going to get his buckets, right? Graham Ike has led Gonzaga in scoring in each of their last 9 games. It's just what he does. The surrounding cast beyond Graham Ike and around Graham Ike. Can those guys hit their 3-point shots? Can those guys attack the basket and finish? That's what's going to determine who wins this game or not. This is going to be a more than hostile environment in Moraga. This is the biggest game every single year. I mean, hell, we say this pretty much about every team Zaga goes on the road and plays, obviously in the WCC, but especially for the 2 real competitive teams against Zaga this season, at least. San Francisco used to be, but not this season. Santa Clara and St. Mary's, right? These 2 teams, when you go to Santa Clara and when you go to Moraga, those crowds, those fan bases know how legit it is to play Gonzaga, and those are the games where obviously everyone shows up for. It's going to be a difficult environment for Gonzaga, an environment in which Zaga obviously lost last season, and Mikey Lewis was one of the biggest reasons towards that. I mean, there's not been a year in which Zaga has swept St. Mary's in quite a while at this point. I'm trying to remember the last time they did so, but back, 2023, 2024, they lost at home to St. Mary's. The year prior, they lost in Moraga in 23 as well. I don't know when the last time they've swept St. Mary's. It just does not happen. 22, they lost to St. Mary's as well. It happens every single year, the final game of the season, whether it being in Moraga or in, obviously, Spokane. The last time Gonzaga swept St. Mary's was when they went undefeated. How can I forget? When they lost in the national championship game to Baylor. That team that was loaded with talent, with Corey Kispert, with Jalen Suggs, with Drew Timme. That's the last time they swept St. Mary's. It was way back then in 2020, 2021. I don't think they're sweeping them again. I'm going to go St. Mary's tonight at home. I love the value for the Gales. We get them at plus money at home in Moraga. The final ever WCC late night hoops action between Gonzaga and St. Mary's. We are likely to see them yet again, obviously, in the WCC championship, but that's not the same. That's in Las Vegas. It's not in Spokane. It's not in Moraga. One more time in the regular season, I'm going to be going with the St. Mary's Gales to beat the Gonzaga Bulldogs. St. Mary's comes away with the victory at plus 125. I like the Gales to close the WCC regular season and officially putting themselves in the number 2 spot in the WCC tourney. Again, we are only a Gonzaga and St. Mary's win away from seeing it once more in Vegas, but again, this one just hits a little different. Folks, thank y'all for watching our college basketball best bets here on February 28th. If you haven't yet, though, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy the video. Make sure to comment if you disagree with any of the picks. We'll be back tomorrow for more daily college basketball best bets. Folks, thank y'all for watching, and Mamba forever.